unscripted landscape of pop culture.
Keep your hands and arms inside the podcast at all times.
And now, the voice, Jeff Tucker.
I got a pocket full of quarters and I'm headed to the arcade. I don't have a lot of money, but I'm bringing everything I made. I got a callus on my finger and my shoulder's hurting too. I'm gonna eat them all up just as soon as they turn blue. 'Cause I got Pac-Man fever. It's driving me crazy. I got Pac-Man fever. I'm going out of my mind.
If you've listened at all to these episodes, and God bless you, I thank you for tuning in and choosing to listen to me of all people. You know that one of the main reasons I started this show was that, first, I love to talk. That's obvious. When I talk for an hour at a time, right? Second, and what goes hand in hand with being able to talk this long, is that I have a really good memory, and I can remember so many vivid things from my life, and this just seemed like the natural way to preserve them and save them. And as I said in some of the earlier episodes, I'm giving all these episodes on flash drives to my kids so that after I'm long gone, they'll have, at this point, 80 plus hours of me talking about my life and, Homestuck and movies and such. And that's an important legacy that I leave behind. And one of the great offshoots, one of the great side effects of that is being able to do this great podcast and having people respond to it. So you'll probably be stunned to find out that, or maybe you're not surprised at all, that I can remember my first day of school. Now we're talking kindergarten, 1976, which is a long time ago, folks. I started school at Lambton Elementary in Norwalk. It was not close to our house. There was a closer school called Little River, Old River School, Little River School, something like that. I never went to it, even though it was pretty close to our house. And instead, my mother enrolled us at Lambton and used the babysitter's house as our address, because, you've got to live in the district or, near that school. And she did that because she worked at Norwalk Square and needed us to have a sitter until she got off at 5 o'clock. So I would go to school, and then I would, I assume in the early years, get picked up and taken to the sitter. And then later on, my mother actually paid a couple of kids like $1 a week to walk us home. And I just thought that was, what a great way to make a living, right? You're going to walk home anyways. Might as well let this kid tag along and make a quick buck. But on those first days of school, and actually the first actual day of school, I was sitting there with all the other 5-year-olds, and we had two teachers for kindergarten, Mrs. Hagar and Mrs. Chen. She was a Japanese lady. Chen, I think, is Chinese, right? Funny that I can't think of her name. But two teachers, and they were giving us like the welcome speech. And part of the welcome speech was, she said, behind you there are a lot of toys. And we all got up, and she was like, no, sit back down. It's not time to play. At home you can play whenever you want. At school you play when we tell you to do. And we had to wait a couple of hours to get, because they had toy trucks, they had kitchen, they had a lot of role play toys. You have a cash register, you have a stove, that sort of thing. And isn't it interesting, because I've got kids and I've put them all through various school districts, and they don't do that anymore. The minute you are enrolled in school now, they start you on the path to learning, as much as you can. And I used to go in and say, I thought kindergarten was supposed to be about learning to be social and not right off the bat about mathematics and language skills. And the teacher would always tell me, well, the curriculum has changed and kids don't have that luxury anymore. They need to learn right away, starting on these basics. And I thought it was kind of sad because when my generation went to school, part of schooling was how to get along with people. And we're moving away from that. We're moving away from it through social media and at the school level, like they're not teaching how to play well with others. I know they still have recess, thank goodness. But there's a lot of rules, and a lot of things you can and cannot do. Like when I was a kid, we used to pick up sticks, and they were all guns and rifles and lightsabers and colonial blasters and the strange shaped gun from the black hole, which looks a lot like the one from Guardians of the Galaxy. And that was what we did. And everybody was the hero, everybody was the villain, everybody lived, somebody died. Next time you died. I don't think kids can do that anymore. It's all deemed too darn violent. Because we're gonna erase that from society. Which is ridiculous. Because we're moving at a point where sporting gets more violent every day. That Ultimate Fighting Champion MMA stuff where guys are beating each other bloody. It's like, well, that's what kids are into. When I used to watch wrestling, I've talked about it on the VHS episode. We watch guys jump from the turnbuckle and land on each other. And now they have to fight where they land on glass and they use barbed wire. And it's got to be ultra violent. But isn't that strange? Because at the school level, we're trying to tone down the violence. And yet entertainment is more violent every year. The number one films the last couple of years are those Hunger Games movies, which are, about children killing other children. It's a battle royale to the death. And that's the ultimate violence. I won't get into a whole rant on the Hunger Games, but I thought it was interesting that all these kids are plucked from their families and thrown into the arena. And we should be appalled at the entire thing. And yet within the arena, they have to create good guys and bad guys. And yet, no, they're all supposed to kill each other. Everybody's operating under the same thing. And Katniss is, she never truly kills anybody unless it's, to avenge Rue or for the greater good. But she's still killing people. And we embrace those movies. Katniss is a strong heroine. Well, Katniss is also a child in an arena with a bow and arrow killing people. So I'm not sure if the anti-violence thing is ever going to work. We as humans like violence. It's the way it goes. And I don't think playing guns on the schoolyard is bad for kids, Somebody once took me to task because I let my son play Grand Theft Auto on our PlayStation. And I said, I think he's learning a valuable lesson. And the lesson is, no matter what you do on that game, the cops are going to get you. That's a pretty interesting lesson to learn. Anywho. So on that first period going into kindergarten, I can remember very vividly having a Fun with Dick and Jane book placed right in front of me. Yes, I went to school when they still used the Dick and Jane how to read method. And they put it in front of me, and it just looked like hieroglyphics. It made no sense. But as I learned to read, and I learned to read very quickly, I fell in love with books. I embraced books. Ever since I learned how to read in kindergarten, have been an incredibly voracious reader. I read all the time. Sometimes 2 or 3 books are on my nightstand at a time. Sometimes I've got 2 or 3 new books on my nightstand that I'm going through, and 1 or 2 older books that I'm refreshing myself with. And even though for the last 6 months or so, I have been engulfed with my stupid smartphone. Isn't that an oxymoron? A stupid smartphone. Playing Candy Crush and Facebook and Twitter and YouTube videos. And going to bed, I watched the entire 6+ hours of the Telltale Back to the Future game because it had the blessing of Bob Gale, the screenwriter, and I wanted to, see what it was. And you know what? I could have watched my son play, but when you're playing it, I think it's even longer than 6 hours because this guy edited out a lot of the, the choices that were repetitious. But I really enjoyed that. But I figured out that first I was losing sleep because I was staying up later than I ever have and getting up at the same time. But I was losing part of the thing that makes me who I am, and that's reading books. So a couple of weeks ago, I started turning my phone off at night. Like right when I went to bed, the phone goes off. And I've gotten back into voraciously reading as many books as I can. And John Waters, God bless him, John Waters, director of Pink Flamingos, Hairspray, a lot of really good cult movies. He has a funny saying. He says, if you go to somebody's house that you're interested in and they don't have a shelf full of books, don't F them. And I think that's a good a sign. As someone who has multiple bookshelves crammed, I've got a row of books in front of it, and then one sideways on top. I would subscribe to that. And I would say that that's probably pretty good advice. Because books are what make us human. The ability to create. The ability to, through words, create an entire universe. Before I learned to read, I used to sit on my mom's lap. And I would bring her a book and I would say, Mommy, make the pictures talk. Make the pages talk. My mother would read to me. And in grammar school, I discovered so many books. Hindle wanted me to do a episode on the books that inspired me as a writer or as somebody who likes pop culture. And I'll get into that in another episode. But one of the books that I have read so many times is Roald Dahl's Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. It is one of the finest children's books ever written. The Gene Wilder version is one of my favorite movies of all time. I love the movie so much, I've not yet figured out a way to do a podcast reviewing it, because how do you, like Ghostbusters, how do you put into words what a movie like that means to you? But I'll get to it. But the book itself, I remember around 3rd or 4th grade, one of the teachers, 3rd grade I had Miss Sinclair, 4th grade Mrs. Shimabukuro, and one of them read it out loud, chapter by chapter. And it's funny, like you see a lot of kids zoning out, but I was riveted, because here's the story of a young kid, Charlie Bucket, who lives a very poor life. His father works at a factory putting the caps on toothpaste tubes, and his mother does the local laundry for people. And he's given a chance through this amazing chocolatier candy man who has a factory right in town that no one's ever gone, nobody ever goes in, and nobody ever goes out. And instead, he's going to send out 5 golden tickets via candy bars, and 5 lucky people are going to get to tour the factory for the first time. And Charlie is the most unlikely kid to win the contest because he has no money. He has birthdays, and he gets a candy bar, and he does this elaborate ritual where he peels it piece by piece back, only to find that there's no ticket. And he's got his Grandpa Joe, who in the middle of the night smuggles him $1, money scraped together, and Charlie goes and buys a chocolate bar, and there's no ticket. And it goes all the way that way until all 5 tickets are found, and Charlie doesn't win. And then on the way home from his job, throwing papers, he sees on the news that the 5th ticket was a counterfeit, and that the contest is still wide open. And at that moment, he finds $1 in the snow. And he takes that dollar, buys a candy bar, and wolfs it down. And the candy man and the candy shop's like, slow down. And he's just cramming the sweet Wonka chocolate into his mouth. And who hasn't? I mean, we as adults, we're not allowed to do that. We're not allowed to wolf stuff down. But the way Roald Dahl writes, you can just sense the urgency of somebody starving to death who finds $1 and is able to buy this amazing candy bar. And the second one he buys, it's got the ticket in it. And miracle of all miracles, Charlie gets to go to the factory with his Grandpa Joe. And I'm sure you've seen the movie. You know what happens next. One by one, the kids are taken out via their own vices. Unlike the movie, there's no fizzy lifting drinks that was added in. At the end, Charlie is simply given the factory. And then it's the stage is set for a sequel, which is good, but doesn't have the magic of the first one. But the beauty of Roald Dahl's book is that, and what Gene Wilder was able to transfer to the screen without going to a big movie review, was that Wonka's this enigmatic character who's charming, mysterious, dangerous, a little crazy, and yet you love him and you want to be with him. And Wonka's the greatest guy ever, and look what he can do. And are we saying something about how genius can make you overlook the danger? You know? The radio today plays Michael Jackson songs more than they ever have after his death. Somehow in death, Michael Jackson's transgressions have vanished. All of the children that he may or may not have touched inappropriately. And we don't know because none of them went to trial. You know, he curbed those off right at the get-go with big checks, right? And isn't it interesting how in death a lot of people are given a pass, even if their lives were a little cuckoo, you know? And Wonka's definitely cuckoo, but that's okay because he's a genius, you know. And in the modern day, there is a book that echoes Willy Wonka quite a bit, or Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, as the book is called, and that is Ernest Cline's Ready Player One. Now, this book was recommended to me by a guy at work, Daniel, who said I would dig it. And, you know, Daniel has a good track record. I have to give it up. Daniel's the guy that recommended Harry Potter to me. He's the guy that recommended Hunger Games to me. And he's the guy that gave me his copy of Ready Player One. I have since got my own copy via Loot Crate. But Ernest Cline, he's very successful. And I give it up to him. He is about 6 months younger than me, and he's managed to do a lot of the things I have tried to do. So God bless him, you know. He wrote the movie Fanboys, which got made into a film about a kid who is dying of cancer, and his dying wish is to see Phantom Menace before it hits theaters, before he dies. So him and his friends decide to go on a road trip to Lucasfilm, to ILM, to Skywalker Ranch, to convince George Lucas to let him see the movie. And it's a sweet, cute little movie. It has some craziness in it. It has some very funny stuff in it. I own it, of course, as a student of pop culture. I own it. I saw it in a theater, and it only played at really select theaters. You had to go out of your way to see it. It was almost, the fans rallied around it to get us to go see this movie. So, and there was also a little bit of controversy where Miramax, the company that released it, was going to cut out the cancer plot and just make it a wacky comedy about kids trying to see Phantom Menace before it comes out. And that wouldn't have been as interesting as a kid's dying wish. And it does end on a pretty funny note where they're all in line for it and they're debating whether it's going to be good or not. And they're like, it can't be anything but great. And there's just that moment of, oh boy, having lived through Phantom Menace and done a whole podcast on the prequels, Phantom Menace got a whole episode. We all know how that turned out, right? So it's a bittersweet movie. And Ernest Cline went on to write his first novel, which is Ready Player One. And I enjoyed this book quite a bit. I'll be honest with you. I really like this book. I'd have to. I've read it 4 or 5 times, and I just finished it again last night because I wanted to do an episode that was a little different after the emotional weight of Ghostbusters and the light, frothy review of WonderCon. You know, let's delve into something with some meat, but something that is not as beloved and has the history of a film like Ghostbusters, right? But Ready Player One's a lot like Willy Wonka in that we meet our character, Wade Watts. He is I think he's 15. He's young. He's poor. He lives in Oklahoma in a place called the Stacks. And the Stacks, this is 2041, something like that, 2040. So it's about 20, 25 years into the future. And the Stacks they're stacks of mobile homes, you know, that there was nowhere to go out, so they go up. And the mobile homes get stacked very precariously on each other, and people live in these things. And it's interesting that when I get to the actual plot of Ready Player One, Cline sets up the America in this, or you know, the world, as a very bleak place. There have been wars, there have been famine. He alludes a lot of it to global warming, which is an interesting plot device. There's no gasoline, so everything has to be electric. People move a lot slower because they don't have gas engines, they have electric engines. And Wade lives, his parents are dead. Like most of our favorite heroes, he has no parents. And that sets him on a quest to find his father, metaphorically, which means finding himself, because the search for the father is the search for yourself. And Wade's escape from this bleak reality is a video game program called the Oasis. And the Oasis is a virtual reality. If you've ever played Second Life, imagine Second Life if it was photoreal, and even the poorest of people could get a glove and a visor which would project the images directly onto your eyes. So you're not looking at a screen. You're actually having the images beamed into you directly. So they're fully rendered, fully believable. And Wade uses this to escape reality. And the gimmick is that he is using it to go to school. He used to go to a regular real-world school, but he got enough good grades that he could go to a virtual school. So when we meet Wade, he is in his house at the top of the Stacks, and he's obsessed with 80s culture, and we'll get to that in a second. But his aunt, who has graciously allowed him to live in this trailer with multiple other people. There are multiple people in each bedroom. They all pool together to pay the bills. And Wade gets by fixing computer items. He's got a laptop that he has just repaired, and his aunt spies it and sicks the new boyfriend on him to get the laptop because it'll pay some debts. So Wade escapes into not only his virtual world, but his real world hideout, which is when gasoline dried up, a lot of people just left their cars where they were. So there are vast oceans of non-working automobiles that nobody has the money to fix, nobody has the gas to drive, and they're just forgotten. So he has a van that is in the middle of a completely collapsed section of cars. So by squeezing through, he's able to get into this van, ride a bike to power a generator, and then jack into the Oasis. And we're taken into the Oasis. using the title of the book. When you log on to the Oasis, it says Ready Player One. And Wade goes to school on one of the virtual school planets where everything is, because there's no real architecture, because it's just, it's just pixels. Everything is marble and high and tall and amazing, and everybody gets to pick how they look. And Wade's handsome, and there's no ugly people anymore, because everybody in the Oasis is good looking and is geeked out with all of their sci-fi armor and such. Now because Wade is poor, Wade doesn't get to travel around the Oasis because it's very expensive. So he spends all of his time on the school planet. That's the only place he can really afford to go. And we're treated to how school on the Oasis works, where you are basically, the teachers are there just to load programs in, and you can't escape them. You pay attention or you get kicked out of school. And if you get kicked out of school, they take away your visor and your glove. So Wade is intent on graduating because he doesn't want to lose because he'll never be able to afford his own visor and glove. And these are low end. There are much more expensive full immersion rigs that will come into play later. But we meet Wade's friend H and some of the other students at the school, and they all hang out in a virtual basement. So while they're waiting for school to begin, they're able to drop levels into the Oasis. And even though his avatar is still sitting at a desk at school, he's multi-levels down at a chat room, which instead of just being type chat, is your avatar is hanging out in a basement with all his other friends. And everything is keyed to 80s pop culture. And everything is an 80s reference. They have record albums and cassettes and movie posters of War Games and Short Circuit and Back to the Future. And so this book is right up my alley, and I really do enjoy a lot of the references. Later on, there will be a few that I don't understand. I know what they are, but they don't have any meaning to me. But in the beginning, the 80s vibe is interesting, and the reason there's an 80s vibe there, everything has a reason. The reason is that the Oasis was invented by a pseudo version of Steve Jobs named James Halliday, and Halliday, along with Ogden Morrow playing the Steve Wozniak role. They started basically it's like Apple. They started out making text-based games, and then hardware, and then complicated video games, and then they worked up until they launched the Oasis. And once the Oasis was launched, nothing else mattered, because this was the new engine that drives everything. And everybody, instead of there's no Xbox, no PlayStation, no Dreamcast, no Jaguar, right? No Wii. But everybody turned their attention to doing software for the Oasis, because if you've got a laser visor that beams it into your head, and a glove that makes everything feel real, and then you can add on a suit that gives you the impression that everything is real, then who's going to mess with that? That's what we want. That's the goal. That's what we're all moving towards, right? That was the promise of Dactyl Nightmare I played back in 1990 at Cerritos Mall at Time Out, which was like $5 for 3 minutes, right? So as the book opens, Halliday has been dead for a few years. But before he died, he set up a contest, and the contest is he has hidden an Easter egg somewhere in the Oasis, and whoever finds the Easter egg gets his fortune. So it is a lot like Willy Wonka. We never get the idea that Wonka is terminal. He does say that he can't live forever, not that you even want to, and he wants to pass the chocolate factory on to a deserving child. In this one, Halliday is dead, and Halliday has set it up so that only somebody who follows in his footsteps after his death and lives the life that Halliday led is worthy enough to get the Easter egg. And of course, the Easter egg refers to the first Easter egg in a video game, which was an adventure where the designer put his name in the game. So in between classes, everybody searches for Halliday's Easter egg. And as the novel opens, the search has been going on 5 years with nobody having won. There hasn't been any progress made. And how Halliday set it up is there are three keys that open 3 gates, and at the end of the third gate is the Easter egg, right? So we're all pulling for Wade to be the guy to solve this mystery and inherit the Oasis, which is a lot like Willy Wonka, right? The difference is that instead of the bratty children vying for the factory, which they're not even aware they're vying for it, which is why none of them are on their best behavior. Like, I'm sure if you told Mike TV at the beginning of the tour, like, look, if you behave yourself, kid, you're going to get the factory at the end, he might have shut his mouth. But Wonka wanted to see everybody acting natural and who was the most rewarding, the most worthy, right? So Halliday does the same thing, and what happens is instead of bratty kids, we are introduced to the Sixers, or the Suxors, as they're called. Now, the people that we're rooting for to find the egg are the egg hunters, or the Gunters, they're called. And the Sixers are basically, to use another metaphor, it's America Online. You know, they're called IOI, and they have all the money in the world, but it's a thinly veiled America Online and how they're evil. And the reason they're called the Sixers is that they don't have names. Their avatars in the Oasis have numbers, 6-digit numbers. Therefore, they are Sixers, and therefore they are Suxers. And we don't want them to win because their plan is to take the Oasis and monetize it to the nth degree and make everybody pay a monthly fee. Right now, it's free. And they're going to put ads on everything. And you never get the idea that moving or doing things in the Oasis is free anyways. But these guys want to make it even worse. You know, these guys want to nickel and dime it till poor people are just thrown out and only the rich can have the Oasis. So it's up to the plucky Gunters to outwit the Sixers and find Halliday's egg. So Wade is joined by his friend H. Now, H is a hip guy who earns money by battling on these televised avatar fights. And then we're also introduced to Artemis, which is the girl that Wade is secretly in love with. And Artemis is a very prolific, very big celebrity in the Gunter world. Like, she's like one of the top picks to find it. She has a blog. He reads it. He watches her, move about. And it's all done as he's stuck on the school planet. So life goes on that way until Wade finally figures out that Halliday would have wanted anybody to have a shot at getting the egg. So he deduces that the egg is probably in. Now there's there's a rhyme that says the clue, but I have the book here, so eventually I'll track it down. But Wade figures out. Here you go. You ready? 3 hidden keys open 3 secret gates, wherein the errant will be tested for worthy traits, and those with the skill to survive these straits will reach the end where the prize awaits. And Wade figures out that it's got to be on one of the starting planets of the Oasis, i.e., the school planet, because that way even people without a dime to their name could find it. So he hatches a plan to search the planet that he's on using the school's need to bounce people around to go to sporting events. And eventually he comes across a replica of one of the first dungeons from Dungeons and Dragons. And when he gets in there, It is exactly like the module because, remember, this whole thing is based off late 70s and 80s culture. There is some 90s and early 2000s culture mixed in, such as Lord of the Rings and stuff, but mostly it sticks to the 80s. And then when he gets to the end of the dungeon module, he's supposed to face off against the Lich King, which is a very powerful Dungeons & Dragons enemy. And Wade realizes that he doesn't have the hit points to battle this guy, and he doesn't know what he's going to do, but it turns out he doesn't have to fight him in combat. He has to beat him in a game of joust. Now, this is where the novel takes a few interesting turns. And what I mean by that is simply it takes turns that I would have put in, so I was really into it because I was like, oh, I would have done that. But it seems odd that in a mainstream novel like Ready Player One, that they would take these bizarre leaps. You know, having the Lich King battle you at joust is really insider. And I bet a lot of people were like, I don't even know what is joust. Now, I play joust all the time at Circus Pizza, right? I love joust. Thy game is over. So the book was speaking to me. He eventually beats the Lich King and gets the first key. And on his way out, he meets the actual character of Artemis for the first time. And he's completely smitten with her. But he has to lie to her because he doesn't want her to know he's already got the key and he's got to get out. Because once he has the key, he can find the first gate. So they argue and talk. And finally she figures out, because his name shows up on the all-important scoreboard, the high scoreboard, like in a video game. And after some tussling, he gets out and races to where he knows the first gate is. So his reward for winning is he makes money, makes credits, and he's able to gain a bit of fame for having been the first kid to solve Halliday's riddle and get the first key. So he does some action figure endorsements and product endorsements. It's all it's rolled out very quickly in the book, and you just get to it. So when he discovers where the second gate is by solving the riddle on the key, he figures out that it's on a replica of Halliday's childhood home. And there's a planet where it's populated with nothing but replicas of Halliday's home, like hundreds of them. So he also knows that it won't be very long before the Sixers figure out where the gate is, because when they look up who, Wade's avatar Percival is, they will discover that the kid has no money, so it must be on the school planet. So the race is on. Once Wade gets that key and heads for the gate, the race is on because everybody's gunning for him. Everybody's gunning for Halliday's egg. It's the biggest prize in the history of mankind. As Marcus Brody said, there's no prize for second place. Or was it Donovan in Last Crusade? I don't remember. Anyways, now when he gets to the second gate, he has to solve a riddle at Halliday's house, which he does very quickly. And the gate is presented. It appears on the wall with black stars and infinite space beyond. And when he jumps through the gate, he's on the task of the first gate. I wasn't going to say the first task, but battling the Lich King at Joust was the first one. And what follows is, in my opinion, the greatest invention of Cline's book, and that is, in order to get the riddle for the second key, Wade finds himself in the movie War Games playing as Matthew Broderick. And the game is you have to keep up with the movie and respond with the correct dialogue and action to move it along. In the context of the novel, it becomes a game called a flick sync, where everybody's playing them. And I'll tell you, out of all the inventions in the novel, this is the one that really sparks the imagination, because who doesn't want to jump into their favorite movies? If there was a Back to the Future flick sync, I might never come out. It would be very dangerous. And the book does something very smart by never veering into pornography, because it would be very easy to showcase pornography using the Oasis. I mean, obviously you know what I'm talking about. It's the same thing that Star Trek did with the holodeck, right? So he finally is able to get the second, the first gate cleared and onto where, the riddle of the second key. And it's this part that the intrigue really starts, because the Sixers try to recruit Wade to be on their side by offering him life, a good life outside of the Oasis in return for his help in finding the egg, which of course will then go to IOI and not Wade himself. And when Wade rebuffs their offer, he has shown the power and what people are willing to go through to get the egg. When the IOI people blow up the stack that he was living in because they think that's where he's at, and they kill everyone Wade has ever had in his life, including the nice old lady who used to feed him breakfast. So Wade freaks out and hits the road with what money that he has. He gets an apartment, and he's near where the Oasis is broadcast from, so he can get an uninterrupted internet feed. And he sets about reconditioning his life. He gets a much more expensive rig to journey through the Oasis. He starts dating Artemis pretty hardcore. And the egg hunt sort of takes a back seat to Wade getting his life together. And it's interesting because the first time I read through this book, I flew through the pages because I simply wanted to know how it ended. And when it got to these parts, like, it takes an abrupt stop, because the book is not so much about just the search for the egg, but is Wade's search for himself. Because he has all these personas in the Oasis, and he's cooler than cool, but in real life he's a mess. And it culminates in him going on a date with Artemis to one of the best set pieces in the book. It takes place at a spherical dance club where when you go in, you're on the outside edge and people are floating or turning into liquid mercury and moving about. And he drives there in his Back to the Future DeLorean that has Ghostbuster logos on the side and a KITT light on the front. And it's like 80s overload. At the club, R2-D2 is the DJ, and him and Artemis just sort of have this moment, and he basically confesses his love for her as their hard to describe. There used to be an old series of laser discs where I think you would have them in the store to show off what the laser disc player could do, and it was like two chrome people floating and sort of meshing into each other in kind of a sexual way, but not really, because it's a cartoon. But they sort of have that moment where they're morphing and she turns into a mermaid, and it's all very surreal and very beautiful as it's described on the page. And it's interrupted by the Sixers finding out that Wade's avatar is there, and they bust in and try to break it up, and try to kill Percival. They're undone by Ogden Morrow, who is still alive and in the Oasis as a wizard named Og, who has ultimate power and can kill people with, he's basically Neo in the Matrix. Because if you're going to be the guy that programs the Oasis, you're going to give yourself more power than anybody else. And he can basically he's a god. But the realization on Artemis's part is that Percival is dangerous, he's a distraction, And she says, I can't see you anymore because we have not made any progress towards the other gates. So until the egg hunt is over, we can't see each other. And Percival is destroyed. So Percival retreats into his life in the Oasis and his very sad life outside of the Oasis in his little apartment coffin that has the windows painted over, food delivered. He never sees another living soul. His only companion is a recreation of Max Headroom. And one of the set pieces in the novel, which will translate well to film, is his asteroid stronghold that he lives in, where he decides to take matters into his own hands. And you can see his armory, he has all his magical weapons, his other weapons, his treasury, and then you get to see his fighter bay where he has his flying DeLorean, his X-Wing, his Firefly Serenity ship that he calls the Vonnegut. And it's just an interesting way to use all this intellectual property and all these different film properties and vehicles and characters. And that's what Ready Player One does best. Using the Oasis as the basis for anything that you want is an interesting concept. And there's a lot of throwaway lines where they mention like Goonies World and Animal House World, and him and the two Asian guys battle it out and end up winning an Ultraman prize on Ultraman World. And there's a lot of properties that are just thrown into the mix. When it comes to the gate, it ends up being about Zork, which is pretty cool, and then about Rush, which I'm not a big Rush fan, so that part didn't really do much for me. I thought it was interesting, but I don't have any affinity for it. And where the book starts to and I'm not going to say fall apart, but where the book starts to become too easy is right at everything is amped up because the Sixers pull ahead of everybody. They manage to get the final key and the final gate, and the stage is set for the biggest battle royale in geek history. Because we're not just talking about the Empire versus the Rebels or the Cylons versus the Colonials. No, we're talking about everybody against everybody. When you're in the Oasis, you can be anybody. You can drive anything. So we're going to have a battle royale with everything and the kitchen sink. But what happens, and where I sort of lose, not interest, because I find the book fascinating, but Wade's plans always work. And I think that's the problem, is that it doesn't make for good drama. It makes for good eye candy, and it makes for good, like, wow, I know all those properties. That's cool. But here's the thing. Good drama in any property, whether it's Ocean's 11 or The Italian Job or anything, is that somebody sits down and says, here's the plan. And then when they go to execute the plan, it doesn't work. So they have to regroup and come up with a better plan on the fly. That's good drama. You know what I mean? That's good drama. At the Battle of the Death Star, they tell them all they've got to get a rocket into the exhaust port. And at the very moment, Luke turns his targeting computer off and trusts faith that he will get it right. And that's where the drama comes from. He's going to trust in the Force to get it right. So Wade hatches this crazy plan, and everything goes according to plan. And here's the other thing that I don't like about the novel. I don't like that Wade's plans always work. As convoluted as they always work. The other is that a lot of times Wade needs something, and he's already got it, and then it's explained to us where he got it at that moment. Right? Did you ever see The Game when Michael Douglas is given an envelope full of junk? He has no idea what it's for. And at one point, he's trapped in a taxi cab going under the water. And everyone in the audience is like, wait, in the envelope, there was a door handle. So he puts the door handle on and he rolls the window down. The same conceit was used in Paycheck, the Ben Affleck movie about reverse engineering. Or, countless other things, Even in a movie as goofy as Mallrats, Silent Bob is trying to do the Jedi mind trick the whole movie. At the very end, he can't reach the remote, and it gets knocked to his hand because he thinks he's doing the Jedi mind trick. We go, yes, he's been doing that the whole movie. That's fantastic. That's good screenwriting. Cause and effect. And us, the audience, remembering that they had that to begin with. Oh my God, he's got that thing that'll help. Yes, that's it. Perfect. Nice. Han Solo doesn't go to fight the battle with them. When it looks as if Darth Vader is going to blow Luke out of the sky, Han Solo has a change of heart. In Ready Player One, Han would have gone with him the whole time. You see what I'm getting at? Good drama is in the unexpected. Everything that Wade does goes according to plan. He never fails at anything. He's the luckiest hero I've ever seen. He gets the Ultraman pill. We know exactly it's going to come into play. There's a scene where he's meandering around and he ends up playing a perfect game of Pac-Man and wins a quarter. And he does use it later on. So yes, what I'm talking about, cause and effect, is in play. But how he gets the quarter is completely by accident. He literally stumbles into the most powerful object in the Oasis. He has no plan to get it. He's not following a hunch. It's a complete accident. And the biggest indication of what I'm talking about is when they finally realize the location of they have the final key, but they need the third gate. And the location of the third gate is in Halliday's castle. Halliday has a castle within the Oasis that is not mentioned until the very end. It's not like Wade takes a trip just to stare at it. Like, here's what would happen. If Ready Player One's going to be a movie, and I'll get to that in a minute. But in a movie version, you would see Wade in his Firefly ship having a pudding cup, staring at the castle and watching like vid feed of nobody ever being able to get inside the castle, right? And then when it's revealed that that's the location of the third gate, and that once you have the crystal key, you can get into the castle, we'd go, well, there's the missing piece. And instead, we're never shown the castle till the very end. It doesn't even show up till the very end. So it's a little like, well, if you guys knew the castle was there, we would have more of a feeling of success once they're able to cross the threshold. But they've never crossed it until they've never even attempted till this time. We've never even seen it. So it's a little frustrating, and I think Ready Player One does unravel a bit near the end. There are many instances where Wade stumbles on it by luck, or even worse, he's already got it, but we never saw him get it. Oh yeah, I'll get that out of my inventory. I need that, It'd be like James Bond facing death and pulling out a gadget that we never saw him get. That would be pretty irritating. Very irritating. So in the end, there's a big battle between giant robots, Mechagodzilla, almost a battle with Voltron, all the spaceships. And when Wade figures out how to open the third gate, the Sixers activate the Cataclysm, which blows everybody in the entire area to bits. And he's the last guy standing because he has the magic quarter. And he can't get to the gate because it's high in the air. So Artemis suddenly has shoes that can fly. We've never seen these shoes. Artemis has Chuck Taylor Converse high tops that can allow her to fly. It's never mentioned until he needs it. This is what I'm talking about. And I know that when it becomes a film, they're going to have to fix all this. You know, because in a book, we'll meander a bit. It's okay. We'll meander. It's very long. Films have to be concise and to the point. So I love this book, but I'm really looking forward to the movie, because the movie, excuse me, by definition has to fix these things. So in the end, Wade is able to solve the final riddle, get the Easter egg, and win the contest. But in doing so, he has managed to flee to Oregon, to fall under the help of Ogden himself, with his friends. Ogden, when it looks like everything is in dire straits, when one of their friends has been physically murdered in the real world, and they have nowhere to go, Ogden flies them all in via private jet, gives them state-of-the-art immersion rigs, and basically bankrolls their success, even though he's not supposed to interfere with the contest. It's all very Deus Machina. It is God in the machine. I'm not sure how they'll handle it in the movie, because it does seem like God coming down and making everything okay. They still have to fight the fight, obviously, but they're doing it with the greatest resources at their disposal, which takes away a bit of their pluckiness, doesn't it? You know, there's a difference between David rising up against Goliath and David being handed a bazooka. You know, there's an it doesn't have the same underdog tone to it, does it? No, it does not. So in the end, we meet Virtual Halliday, who seems very happy to hand the mantle over to Wade, and in a really bizarre moment shows Wade a switch that will disintegrate the entire Oasis. And I'm not sure what that's for. Are we supposed to believe that somewhere down the line Wade will discover that real life... Now, it ends with everybody in the entire planet via the Oasis wanting to talk to Percival/Wade, and Wade leaving the Oasis, running through a labyrinth, which is a replica of the one from the adventure game, and coming face to face with the real Artemis, who is named Samantha. We've just found out that H, his best friend who does battle, is actually a very large black woman. So they do subvert some of the expectations. And Samantha has a big birthmark on her face. But for Wade, who's never been able to make contact with anybody in the human world, she's the most beautiful thing he's ever seen. And the novel ends with them sharing an embrace, and Wade realizing he doesn't even want to go back into the Oasis now that he has found love in the real world. And again, the novel is not the search for the Easter egg. It is the search for Wade to find himself, to find his humanity again after giving it up to the machines. That being said, Ready Player One's going to make an amazing movie if they can secure enough intellectual property to put this movie on the same level as Who Framed Roger Rabbit, because that's where it needs to be. If they can't line all these things up, don't bother. Don't make generic versions. We want to see an X-Wing. We want to see the Firefly. And I've already said that he's not going to go into War Games. He's going to go into Goonies because, are you ready for this? Steven Spielberg has signed to direct Ready Player One. Now, this would be the ultimate cause for celebration, except Spielberg had already signed to do Robopocalypse by Daniel Wilson. And I'm going to do a whole episode on that because I think Robopocalypse is just as good or better than Ready Player One. And Robopocalypse comes, as my friend Hendel put it, it is a movie. You just have to film the book. You don't have to do anything but just hold the book up and go, you guys do this and we'll film it. And there's our movie. But for whatever reason, Spielberg's not going to do it, and instead he's just said he's going to do Ready Player One after he does one or two other movies. So it is a couple of years down the line. Whether Spielberg follows through, I don't know. Somebody will direct Ready Player One. I think most of the fandom is in agreement that it is a Robert Zemeckis title. Because that's the guy who did Back to the Future and Roger Rabbit and Forrest Gump. He knows how to do big, expensive, complicated movies. You know, I have all faith in Zemeckis. I have all faith in Spielberg. Cline's writing the script, so I hope that somebody is going to take him under their wing. He did write Fanboys, so he has written scripts, but you're going to have to jettison a lot of the wonkiness in Ready Player One to make it a good film. You can't. It's not like Robopocalypse. You can't just hold Ready Player One up and go, "This is what we're filming." It's going to take some fixing. Not the least of which is a lot of really obscure Japanese references that even I, King of the Geeks, didn't get. Like, it's really nerdy, and I'm not saying that in a bad way. I'm saying it in a good way. It was nerdy even for me, ladies and gentlemen. But I think, you know, if Pixels bombs this summer, Ready Player One might be in trouble. Because Ready Player One's going to be a $300 million movie. Easy. Easy. Even if you get unknowns. You know, and you're going to have to get some pretty good names to play these. You know, Sorrento, the guy who runs IOI, the leader of the Sixers. I mean, that's tailor-made for Jude Law. Ogden Morrow is tailor-made for somebody like Saul Rubinek. The mains are all unknowns. But it's the IP. It's getting R2-D2. You know? It's getting all those vehicles, all those planets, all those video games. Get them all to sign and make a movie. I look forward to it. I really do. Like I said, I've read this novel 3 or 4 times. You know, Freudian slip, I just called it, I read this movie. I read this novel. So, hopefully, they will get it in gear and they will really rush this thing into production. Because if they don't, it's going to be like Robopocalypse, where it's just going to be too complicated. Or even worse, it could be like Virus Z, where World War Z, where what shows up on the screen is nothing like the movie we were promised. And I mean, if you read World War Z, it's a fantastic novel that bears no resemblance to the movie that's ended up on the big screen. And Ready Player One, with its rabid fan base, needs to at least sort of resemble the book when it makes it to the screen. You know? But Spielberg can do it. He did Minority Report. He did AI. This is in the same vein. God, I wish he'd done Robopocalypse. I'm going to talk about that one in a few episodes just because I really dig it and I've read it a lot. I like to reread books a lot. There's another one, 11/22/63, the Stephen King novel about JFK's assassination, time travel. I have read that a lot, and go look at it. It's massive. You know, it's hard to lift it, so I need a Kindle in the worst way. I need a Nook. I need to virtually read some of these books just because my wrists hurt from hefting them. Anywho. All right, folks, we're going to wrap it up. Hope you enjoyed this strange novel version of 91 Reasons. It is the twisted landscape of pop culture, and that includes just about anything I see fit. And Ready Player One certainly fits, having been a bestseller, an audiobook read by Will Wheaton, and it was included in one of the loot crates. So you know it's arrived. If you end up in a loot crate, you're part of the pop culture history, man. The fabric of pop culture. Did you read Ready Player One? Let me know your opinion. Was I off the mark? I don't know. Just giving you my opinion. But thanks for listening. Thanks for supporting the show. More episodes on the way until we run out of things to say, which could be never. It could be never that we run out of things to say. I'd like to give a big hello to some of the listeners. Hey, Mark. It's not a conversation. You cannot talk back to me and expect an answer. What was that? Oh, you can? All right, maybe I stand corrected. I stand corrected, Mr. Mark. Mark thought he was talking to me the other day, so just throw that in for him. Thanks for listening to the show. I am the voice. I am Jeff Tucker, and the show is 91 Reasons.
Thanks for listening to 91 Reasons. Please subscribe and leave a review on iTunes. Find us on Facebook. Is anyone even still listening?
Someone got the food. I love it! Total carnage! Chicken, fight like a robot.
I got a pocket full of quarters and I'm headed to the arcade. I don't have a lot of money, but I'm bringing everything I made. I got a callus on my finger and my shoulder's hurting too. I'm gonna eat 'em all up just as soon as they turn blue. 'Cause I got Pac-Man fever. It's driving me crazy. I got Pac-Man fever. I'm going out of my mind. I got Pac-Man fever. I'm going out of my mind.
Ha 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 ha.